Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on, up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra. The mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Dozo kun la bu ji da zi ya la zhu ji yang de su. Zhu da qi zhu nie mu ne zhi jia zhu zhu zi qi. Ma ri min zi dong ye nyung bu ji ni jun zi ri zhu. De ne da jin sa jin da zi yu de jia zi tu yu gu. 觉照觉当觉念间，大略明心将，养老女阿拉巴达那里，阿拉巴达那里，阿拉巴达那里，这点觉觉前绕日子起。 le de mo me ba la se ne ga dan de je jong lo do bo ye lo zhe bo be no le lo 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 je bo ye shu ye ye ne ye do ye re ye ro Chose de lo badon noro, bien cho no be badon adesha, yare shilo jilo so, shamba tome yenye noro, chode de yue de don chobe, seza gasa nenye sone, yaje shube jila so, ya yo me shu je le zhuo, la wo zhao ba re be ge zhuo, san jie gong zhong ba ba yao se su, fa mo da yue je la su wan, xie zhuo da be chong a de sha. 格东定别灭波中等见，念就当时过去送了送，格东那么当了所我的，看见心的自己送啊帮，我到这边我说接着见，当我定别到不给着见，要是就把接了所我的。 教松根的那么多节长，刚老刚的些年最重的，教当天梦梦中孙子命，专接那么能了说完的，让将送着跟那大爷命，给上他把这边叫我住，这边这边他看什么也。 现在先年能了说我的，叫我更多养到那么多，人民去这边了往学见，找到了就应得少做的，多接讲给我。 领导手上的就当做的就当想就不多到那就做的，大概就这么做那的，到了本身上的如果手上的就当做的就当想就不多到那就做。 大约这边所能见，到了边线上的如果就上见就做见就能拿上就不多到年就做见，大约这边所能见，到了边线上见如果有。 哎，哎呀，懂着。哎，刚刚就他们那老师把那怎么了？上这当，那去，但是刚刚演呢，确诊的那没在的接，他落几两确诊的接推，那刚刚有，那同门当，那可能也是到了去的。
Ema, you are muted.
啊，给你们片门多。
哦，我没写的些，还得看嘛写的，这个得看嘛写的。见过差不多。First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to express my greetings for this new year, and I pray and hope that the particular year that we have started, we will end this year in accordance with the Dharma, the practice of Dharma.
我从基本打不出送去老少不巧嘛的，菜你不巧的是，我那人多，他那给你们有时候呢，他给我确实送多，他让人多，给一份，这啥好是个早路的。
So actually, it is not we consider as something that is new when it comes to New Year, but it is an old age is one that is knocking at the door. As we go through those experiences of every new year, the old age is knocking at our doors. So this is how the impermanent nature is.
되지. 나 당가서 되게 저러고 나 다 가래 질라 가래요래. 상가서 좋아로 왔다. 가래 질라요래. 세상나. 아니 저러고 나 가래 저러고 해서나 아니 세들 예 뒤서 다 로자 나에 수제 대학이 뒤서 대 저러고 그래. 다 저서는 저러고 로사다 가래에서는 좋았다이로 와. 그 저와시만 매나네 다 마음이 시원해 지시노나 다 가래. 다 대면에 리파 인원에 다 남비존에 소만하게 지요 사례래. 오늘 들을 진도에 진도에 sana 단도에 다지 지게 되어와.
So now, what we need to hurry whenever the new year comes and the old age is approaching and knocking at our door. What do we have to prepare? What do we have to be hurry about here? Now, as the new year comes, it is the sign of exhaustion of our lifespan, right? So then when once the lifespan is exhausted, then the only choice is to embark on the path of death, which is unavoidable. And so now, when we pass away from this life, where we go? If we do not accept next life or the life after death, then that is a different case. Just like the lamp has been put off and it's just gone, and there's no continuity of this lamp. It is just completely gone. So if one then follows the reasonings and accepts life after death or the next life, then we really need to prepare the place where we actually go. We need to find a proper place where we can take a rebirth.
당가서 던져지게 고안해도디 당가서 단대가서 먼저도 개발이 미세계 이치제급이 된다스게 말이나 그 저거 조선들의 가르치기 돈을라 저하시면 여면 제거잖아. 다 넘버 10이 되는 제거에 당가서기 다 저희 다가 저희 노동색으로 왔다. 남비 정기 딱 저하시면 여러 말에서는 저거 자주는 종전은 저거 그때 넘버 10을 진 여러 말이 풍부되어 있는 넘버 10을 생기 여러 말이 다 되래.
So now here, when speaking about whether or not one accepts the life after death, when we were arguing on that, and that this is if this is the basis of argument, then the Buddhist teachings, the Dharma normally teaches about to focus on the consciousness, whether there's a continuity of consciousness or not. Whether we engage in all sorts of arguments or debates and so forth, but so far as the question of whether or not there is a afterlife, the life after death, or the next life or not, it is merely done on the basis of analyzing whether there is a continuity of consciousness.
당가서 다 여바 시작했잖아요. 다 집부터 먹는지 세계를 집어나 현지게네 저하시면 여래서 여바 손바나게 지신바전에 편에 니녀도 질려주네. 너무버도 상제 받은 로드에게 내가서 대리지기 전주지를 친들어와. 괜찮은 당가서기 되게 렌더를 지잖아요. 데릴 것을 봐봐니 샹존하는 친구 친해져요. 것을 봐봐.
So we as the followers of those noble beings or the sublime beings who actually have realized the existence of next life or the life after death. And it is through their experiential knowledge, we uh, are fortunate to be able to receive these instructions, and we become ourselves as their followers. It is therefore we accept our next life. For that, we are receiving the teachings of the Dharma. And the particular teachings that we are receiving is the stages to the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa or Lam Rim Chenmo.
지와시마 요 말이다 지와시마라 태도 사는 게 이게 단답을 준전 대 태소 사는 아니 도쇼는 계시시나 내려서야지 대한민도.
However, now if you were to ask that if there any result or any evidence, someone who actually rejects the life after death or the rebirth, or someone who actually have a doubt about it, do they have any concrete result? But when I look at that and observe carefully, I don't think there's any result, any proof or the evidence they may be able to present non-existence of future life and so on.
당가 저거서 보다 인자네 당가 저기 담바까지 제선 중요한 사나래 다 뭐네지 영문나마 정화가 전부서 라마나와 되게 라마 저기 제선 중요한 인자네 네 네 상기 된게 나가 되니라 네 라마나와 되게 담바 투병보다 네 나래 집에 라마나지 투 제시 배영원에 고능의 제미 같이.
So it is therefore we are the followers of our kind Guru Buddha Shakyamuni, and they're the followers such as Lama Tsongkhapa, who actually show us an unmistaken path. It is therefore in order to cultivate appropriate motivations, let's visualize before oneself Buddha Shakyamuni surrounded by the lineage gurus of great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment.
아니 딘드기 대다긴 딘드 세나레 딘드긴 딘데나 아니 랑 소지비 아니 랑게 전제 파마 세나레 다데에게 아니 지 소창 베슨 천적이 대화되지 동행면대 봐 인사에 딘드기 랑텐 셔서선지 단전라는 소리지야 아니 제드비 소리지 메바체네 지 뭐네 지 가시 쪼신데 지 레와 친구에 비 소리지 아니 야지 쉔능의 소리 딘드기 메바치 제와에나 아니 삼바들라 지 타녀 보내 지레사라.
So here now having visualized the Buddha Shakyamunis surrounded by all other lineage gurus, and then in their presence, imagining yourself being in their presence, surrounded by all other sentient beings, and down to sentient beings without exceptions, including animals, insects, and so forth, who have a similar wish to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings as we do. So therefore, I must here to receive how to achieve happiness for myself and that of other beings. So one should be there in their presence with delightfully that you are actually receiving the unmistaken path for happiness. So with this motivations, let's meditate for a couple of minutes.
더 되게 이거는 치바지는 네 컨센 바셔야지. 근데 상조 완전히 바스.
With this positive motivations, we are receiving the teachings on the Jiangsu of Lam Rimpa, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment.
사제 정원도 신나 자이 사지제. 주고 전바 때문에 현재바비 차와 사네. 좀 투배 원본에 랑게 전제 자이나네 바지. 아니 고송도 진 덴틀레단 제바니 상나도네 라마 대다네 대바지지.
So such teaching is given by laying out 4 major outlines, beginning from the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as noble source. With this, when we are, expressing this, when we are actually reading this outline, imagining that the kindness and the qualities of our great teachers, beginning from Buddha Shakyamuni all the way to one's root guru.
다 당하를 기바지 취취 채와 소용데 된르게 주부 담바 대다기 송비 취텔에 채와 가려야래 사는 소용데 아니 다 상주 다 상가서 거스 바바 친이 저데 상주 랑제를 마이네 상주 랑린 첨보들라이네 용現다的면다와 취취 가려야래 세상나 아니 동화제 내 통제 대비네 여자 용수조비 채와 아니 생디비 토소 대비 아니 라드랑 대비 채와 아니 신다 첨보니 줄로라 케비 아니 라마니 제 명아도 데마 세데다 랑린 첨보 통모 많이 비추죠.
So now next outlines is Dhamma Gurvakevicha Chogi Chodamba, showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings. So in this, what is a unique feature of it? Actually, this outline describes or explains the unique feature of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, or the Lam Rim Chenmo. Because this teaching of Lam Rim Chenmo, condenses the essence of all the teachings of the Sutra and also on Tantra, and also have a very specific instructions on how to subdue one's negative state of mind, and elaborates the teachings of the great 2 pioneers the great 2 Indian pioneers, masters of Indian 2 pioneers, the master of 2 pioneers.
다 채와제도 주저송세는 주저송의 저음도 대망들 인자네 사제 송바데네 니시 제타샤와세데네 제법이 간대체네 제법으로 아니 녀법이 간대체네 녀고으로 소에네 나리체만도 여바 송바나 예예 내가 주저부터 비샤게제네 가디에나 아니 결론지에 단달라 미가데스여와.
So this will then be followed by the third outlines, which is how to listen to the teachings in which both teachings and its authors has agreed.
다 넘방은 저 라마 제테테 이름발라 니 자이정되게 사지 아니 랑지 자와 신이 대비치다 때는 로제다 점이르마 니 아니 가만하셔.
So then the fourth outline, which is the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught, the actual instructions, which has 2 subdivisions, 2 outlines, how to rely on the teacher, which is the root of one's spiritual path, and how the students train their mind after having relied on the spiritual teacher.
때는 로제다장 이름발라 니 대이때나 니볼렘 비시 교와다 니보 제타네 비시 니제 다 동모비 다 니보 제타네 비시들라 니 랑치 나자라 니보 제다 니볼렘 뭐지 다 동모비 다 니볼렘 증모라스 송 주부 충원다 대모에 나제르 마냐선이지 주부 된다 대모에 나제르 마냐선이지 주부 챔비 나제르 마냐선이지 다 동모님 제사 다 주변 챔피언한테 렘바 나서는 저라 송 대체는 주변 과담바 생제 코나 템바 생대 제다 집이 생제는 쇼바로 호츠예지 다 동본인들사 다 생제는 쇼바로 호츠되라 송 생제는 호바로 로그비 전세 호바레레 올로로 산제만 주바 템바 로바 로비 렘바 니시바지 다 동본인들사 다 로바 로비 렘바 니시바라니 테바치 뭐 찔라로 제다 제바도 로제 테바 호츠예지 다 동보라 송详细的老板老板的讲嘛，将来就是的老板从那阶段里面去接，到东北人这场，到从那阶段里面去的了你，刚老了毕业，带老板的毕业，带了别人巴结，别的电影带了别人巴结，带了别人巴结，他东北人这他带了别人巴了你，学把这了这的，学把的发现他们年了老直接，他东北了你，랑게 상지지 주민바시바 바로 대신 받아서다 제지 주민바시바 대용무 버자라 같이 다 동벌라 주 심바 수준 조바 준리 something 니 셔라 당가서 셔러긴 주다 니 대용무 버신 거 패치 되는 데서 다 상주제서 담배치 되지 다 상주제 상주 생비 담발레네 제세 주 쇼발은 주네 바로 심바 주던 대용무 버지 니 예배 나이 아니 바로 대 심바 주기 타마 아니 패치 대용무 버지 연구도 인상
Having received the instructions from the bodhicitta and received the instructions on the vows of the bodhisattva's vow, one have then received the teachings on 6 perfections, which is the core practice of the bodhisattvas. And out of the 6 perfections, we're actually beginning in the perfection of the wisdom.
대체 배제가 가장 많이 뒤 상사로练的 상수
다가라 인르비치 다가라 텐데 니버 신이 주멤버 제베 도이
네
도이
상에디 너무 강한데랑 단데 대변지 선에 대 강디 인노스 진도 어디 사제다 대다다게 선나다 이시지 초양 다번 주바 빠드면바 대인 제부지다 라나면바 양다바 주비 상추당 팀바 더블 제네 메도 셰소 소인데 지로샤를 지코 상자
So let's go back and read that last paragraph of the chapter 224, which is the bodhisattvas who attain unsurpassed perfect enlightenment by the 6 perfections are called a great river, a great ocean of virtues, generosity, and so forth, are in the most precious cause of all excellent things for all living beings. Accordingly, there's nothing comparable to the perfections, immeasurable completion of the collections of merits and sublime wisdom, and their fruits of unsurpassed perfect enlightenment.
바로 대신 뭐 두번째는 랑지 미바시바 세드 다 타니르마도 랑지 미다 제주미나야 바로 대신 뭐 주레 라와 게네 아니 류응어버지로 손자스 게요 말아 이나 다 타니 코로자인데 수익이 반도 지래로 과조원의 대체인데 아니 바로 대신 뭐 주데 랑지 미바시바스나 라 송도
So the 6 teachings on the 6 perfections are known as the training in the perfections that mature the quality you will have when you become a Buddha. In other words, the trainings in the 6 perfections are said to be the matured one's own continuum. Of course, other practices of helping others and so forth will also enable one to mature one's own continuum. But this one is just stress more on the 6 perfections, because the 6 perfection really, targeted towards the practice of 6 perfection is really targeted towards maturing one's own continuum or the subduing one's own continuum. So here, to begin with, now the helping others to mature, the 4 ways to gather disciples, right? So it is from training in the 4 ways to gathering disciples that help others mature has 5 parts. It begins from the 5 parts. The first one is what the 4 ways of gathering disciples. Second is the reason they are stipulated as 4. And the third is their functions. And the fourth, the need for this who gather and following to rely on them. Fifth, a somewhat elaborate explanations.
그렇지. 다들 가서 뉴욕 코노마시에 디오시스디 동로 가서 파신 둘을 잠깐 둘로 디오시스디 동로 되시에 가서 코와신 봐. 아니 니봐 마와. 아니 대셔 봐 대팀 봐시디 동보 대셔보대 로는 니봐 제다 아니 그게 저시대 전에 줘로.
So now first we need to remember what are, just like when speaking about the 6 perfections, we have to remember the 6 perfections: generosity, ethical discipline, so on and so forth, right? Similarly, when it talks about the 4 ways of gathering disciples, the 4 ways must be understood. 4 ways must be must identified right from the beginning, because it's a generosity and the pleasant speech and working at the aim. Aim is that setting disciples to work on their aims, and the fourth is consistency of the behavior. So those are the 4 ways that one need to bear in one's mind when it comes to the teachings on the trainings in the 4 ways of gathering disciples that help others to measure.
다 동보네 다 코와신 바생 간지를 송물을 쓰는 진바네 서로 아 파신지 거스 시바다 달라 송도.
So here now it talks about what is 4 ways of gathering disciples. It says the first, generosity, right? Generosity is, as earlier explained in the section of these perfections.
미코로 코와신 바로와.
It is generosity, being generous and giving things to others, those who need it.
다니바 냠바마네 송도 냠바마네 뒤자라 파르데 신바 템바오 송도.
So second, the pleasant speech. What is meant by pleasant speech is teaching the perfections to the disciples. Sorry.
동보대 가서는 신발을 취지 신발 선생님이 예요아. 뒤에는 코와 신발 생인데 라 선생님 신발을 자. 아니 가서 냠바마와들라 아니 취지 신발을 자고다.
So now here, both of these two, generosity and pleasant speech, are belongs to the category of generosity, because the first is generosity is earlier explained. The first generosity is referring to a mere material gift, and second, which is the pleasant speech, is giving the dharma, the teachings of the dharma. So both falls in the category of generosity.
다 대셔바네 제타 템비 대대나 뒤자를 쇼든 주바 양다바 랜드 주바오 대템바네 젠라 대 강자와데 랑 네네 대단 템바 하바데 도대진레 송도.
So then here, third one is working at the aim, is setting disciples to work on their aims as they have been taught, or involving them in correctly taking up these aims. Then the fourth, consistency of behavior. So consistency of behavior is stabilizing yourself in the very aim in which you have established others, and then training in them. The ornament of mind, the sutra says.
도대전에 진총 되는 렌주당 단이 지스 주나지 현범 하당 된셔당 된튼이 된도 바인 시소서 강기롱의 시제.
So here it's the ornament of the mind, the sutra says. Generosity is the same as before, teaching the perfections, involving others in taking them up, and involving yourself are asserted to be pleasant speech, working at the aims, and consistency of behavior, respectively. No.
Nipanese, Dishi Jagobi Tessenkaresona, Nipanese, Gishi Dishi Neshana, Ansondo, Diwajit, Jedamason, Senator on the Shevidi, and Tanka Jago with the Tankati Nebachida, and Maneva, the Northern Java, Tendere, Neba Sayudi, any telemom, Gununa Mandose, Tendere, Tangeba is right.
So here now the next talks about the reason they are stipulated as 4.
Shenachi, Kogiwala Javi Shir, Dual, what it, Kogiwala Javi Shir, Dualane, Tomatella Gagola, Dayan, Sanzi Jimbe, Sanzi Jimba Jene, Lula Pendovala, Doso, or Sondo.
So why are the ways of gathering disciples set as 4? This is a question. And the reply: in order to gather a following of disciples for the sake of establishing them in virtue, they must first be placed. This, moreover, depends on your giving them material things, providing benefit to their bodies.
So Chetan Jinse Carson, Pendo Batelanga, so Katichum Savora. Mala Pento Shibushun said, Metela Gabuche, Pentongetella, Pentongeta Gabushana, Gabucha said, you can't ship at the Nyogoro.
So benefits, first, if you do something that is beneficial for others, and then that person will be pleased with us, right? If the individual is pleased with us, then they are willing to listen to us, whatever we say.
Pendo Toso Sontero, Pendona Gabuchi, Gabuchana, Sheba the Nyogre.
If you benefit, then they will be pleased. If they are pleased, then they will listen to you.
Gane Karicha Borisana, and then Carinoro Jetagolana, and Teta Gane, Lana Jawa, Tomate Jeta, Cheta Shasi Shegola. Deya Nyemba Mae, Sheshebade, Misheba, Tenso Sawa Done, then she Maloba, Zendu Jubi, Shoro, the Nyemba Mae.
So then it says, thus pleased, they first must know how to connect to the path. That is to say, by using pleasant speech to explain the teachings, you cause them to cast away ignorance and doubt, and then to correctly apprehend the aims.
Tadi Chedanga Shanchu Sambana Mudero, Toma Pajobi, Sinjeta, Zimpatombi, Mu Carre Sesona, and Deja de la Lanti and Tandala, and college Zimbatone, Tsu Yunchi, Tsu Yune, and Chu Tenji, Chu Yanache, Shanchu Sambi, Dero, Lanero.
So this is Bodhisattva's practice. First the Bodhisattvas engage in the practice of generosity, such as giving material gift and gathering disciples, and having gathered their disciples, then teach the Dharma to show them a correct path to enlightenment.
Eta Shepana, Ten Shepe, Yawa Juba, La Juba Shela Achi. They are Ali Juba saying at the end of the Ten Shepa de Shela Achi. And Jela, they are ranking Maduna, Jen Judo, Chetasha Grosso, Shepana, Choraya, 20 Miduna, Jela Teta Dushi Chisha. Chue Chang Tadong Jen Chicho Grosso Shesene, do the Menela. Rangi Juba Shiina. Dacha Kala Tsubate, Gyawatela, Korayan never shebena, Deduna, Dacha la Pembatan, Dewa Nyeso Nyane, Satin Jujin, Shusimba Naja, Medoba Tembanjere, Della Timba Gubi Shede, Sondudes.
So once they have understood this, you cause them to accomplish virtue by working at their aims. However, if you have not accomplished virtue yourself, when you say to others, you have to engage in this, that you have to reject that. They will say, why do you tell others accomplish these aims when you do not accomplish it yourself? You still need somebody else to correct you. They will not listen to what they have to practice. But if you are practicing yourself, they will think this person is established in the virtue to which he or she is leading us. So we will definitely derive benefit and happiness if we accomplish it. They then either engage in that by engaging anew, or for those who have already engaged in it, do not reject it and become stable in it.
대체 당가 순전히 되래. 아니 된저게 상주 선비게 투지미에 푸이미에 대사네 동부 신바대 당 신바당네 네 뒤자의 가고 연비 거다라 네 변의 대신랑도로 치지 말로 바대 때 대신랑도 치지 말로 바대 미에 피게들 때마라 네 라니게 대신 내루데라 냥해지면아 아니 바로 보대 대신 내루를 치 자 냥해를 치 자투고 말해 인산에 라니
So here what it says is, now when you engage in the practice of generosity to gather disciples, we not only that we are gathering disciples by means of engaging in practice of generosity, giving material gifts and so forth, but we should have a capacity, or one should be a capability of giving the teachings on Four Noble Truths and what is to be, eliminated and what is to be adopted, and so forth. And the path and fruitions must be taught. And then whatever the teachings that you may have given to others, you yourself must also to the same practice as you instruct others.
So
here, therefore, in the Lam Rim Chenmo, what it is stated by Lama Tsongkhapa is that without subduing one's own mind, there's no way that we can subdue the mind of others.
가서 뒤에 뭐 보실 때 냐네 코로나는 지 인치미진 로그에서 지나다 야 최년에 쉬우쟁이 제선쟁이 지나요 지 변조된데 로시 전부 매와 있는 루머트서 지 관련하다 양지고 말어 땡 따바 타좀이 첩이 쳐봐 말이야 배는 덤바가 진지게 제선 준비게 견로도서 아니 다 파비 제시를 내시디 선용행을 장지 초시버전에 네 냐네를 내거로 된지를 야 피게들 심바도는 디자인 되고 그러잖아 쇼티는 가와를 내거로.
So here now, when we look at this teachings where it says the helping others to mature, the 4 ways to getting disciples, it is not necessarily that when we are actually giving the teachings to others, it is not mandatory to follow those 4 ways of gathering disciples, because then one may think that if I am to giving teachings to others, I must first engage in practice of generosity, such as giving material gifts and so forth. And so one may have this kind of understanding. So this is just the general teachings that it mentioned in the teachings, but it's not necessary. So now here, then also we have not the guru who is actually giving material gift, but the disciples who are making an offering to the guru. This is also there. The system of making an offering to the guru is also there. So it is not contradictory right? Whenever we receive the teachings of the Dharma from one's teacher, we always make a mandala offering. It is a form of offering, right? Not only just you are making an offering of your material, the material offerings, but also you're imagining all your body, resources, one's accumulation meters of 3 times and so on, are all imagining in the form of mandala and making an offering to the Guru in order to receive the teachings.
야, 드르게 가서 내가 지에 통한다는 배는 데레레. 가서 도저히 되는 까지 monada, 니마 monada는 전부 소비가라. 대 상상하게 너무 찬송이 돌로 마보건을 해요다. 그래서 요약이 카톡 밑에 그냥 첨부해서는 요거다. 얘나 비게 그냥 요거 로지 요니요 디 갈래갈래야 추가차로다. 드르 그 가서 푸기 고하다는 애면 쇼레면도.
However, it is possible, by means of giving material gift, eventually the people who actually gather in that particular event become a practitioners. For instance, I've seen myself in the Bodh Gaya during the Kayi prayer festival and the Nyingma prayer festivals. They actually give away a lot of material gifts, particularly the money, to people who come to this prayer festival. And I've seen that many people from the border regions, and particularly from the Himalayas, all of them dressed up like monks and sort of lay practitioners and so forth. And initially their aim is to receive the gift. But then when you look at that, as they keep coming there and listening to the teachings, initially they have the aim of receiving the gift, but then eventually they have turned their mind and changed their mind and become a real practitioners. So this is possible again.
되게 소소 가서 계속 도사시나 메텔 줄루텔 현고해도다.
So then also if you from one perspective, whoever the prayer festival is organized by, whichever the order, the 4 religious orders, so the people who participate will become more closer to that religious order as well.
된저게 텔 가볼해던 뒤 온제게 라마라 가볼해거든. 온제 라마 가볼해나 온제 라마의 강시거든요. 그래. 된저제네 그 로톤체 자체전도와.
So here there is a way, then you have become yourself very close to that particular tradition. And if you become close to that tradition, and then then you become close to the founder of the tradition, or the main figure of the traditions, which will then enables you to, which will then provide an opportunity for us, receive opportunity to receive the teachings of Dharma and practice.
제가 주치고 이게 제대 시에거면도 정신 강 쪼보 임바도서라 부고도서 하다 공고고야나 동보 정신도서라 임바동 거고도 이제 정신의 로봇 제거도 정신의 로봇 제니 갈래갈래 부고서 하다라 공 인터넷 다 갈래갈래 셔야지 동고도 컨트롤 해도 돼.
There's a way of gathering disciples, not only in terms of the spiritual disciples, but also if you think about the remote places somewhere where if you want to establish schools and primary schools and so forth, elementary schools and so forth, first you must go there and be friendly with the people in that particular region, and then eventually by giving them material gifts and so forth, so that you will be able to establish schools and so forth, right?
Baba bete yana jen tsene nam mebo zo shangye yana chara kono tone meche tola ta shangye tse baba ma shi ko bugul kashin shangye kandro 되게 편도 여러.
So here now again, even though that it says here, one should, whatever the instructions one may have given to others, one must follow this practice as you instruct others. This is one way of understanding. But there's another way that even though that one may not be able to perfect in engaging in such practice, but your understanding of such practice will again, benefit others if you were able to teach others, right? Even though that one may not have undertaken such practice, seriously, but your understanding, you're sharing your understanding of the teachings will also benefit others. There's a possibility. For instance, the father who have actually engaged in all this gambling during, there's a story saying the gambling during his lifetime. At the end of his life, when he's going through the process of dying, the process of death, then he actually tells his children, when you follow my footsteps, this will really ruin your life. You should not do that. So this is how it is beneficial for the children, right? Although that he himself is not something that actually abandoned all those gambling and so forth, but he himself actually gambled, and at the end of his life, then he's sharing his bad experience with his children and not to follow his footsteps. So this is actually beneficial as well.
등에 가르쳤는데 ranchi dio 통에 그 강사지 이나 인치미지 파르보에 같이 제거를 신주랑 제거 말이야. 나 파르보에 신주비지 정에는 이마대 가서게 현재 된지 천이 카드 시에데 등에나 뒤서뒤지 담아들라 근데 랑땡에 등에 현재 천이다 되바라고 말이야. 간절을 살아는데 때 마타라지 다 하산나바다베 토네 니 정시지 말로가 땡 통에 넣어지기. 등지는 문제 전에마도 다 뒤속이 뒤서 될라 나마 되게 냐네 제거면 나 제거면 살아와이나
So nowadays, if you really keep looking for someone who is really subdued his or her mind, then we may end up not finding a teacher nowadays, right? Because it is just now, what we need to understand is the whomever you think one consider as one's spiritual teacher, the teacher you should understand the teacher is actually giving the teachings is something that accords with the teaching given by the Buddha. In other words, unmistaken teachings and resolute intention with a pure intention. This is the must, be possessed by whoever is giving the teachings of the Dhamma.
Teacher, 내가 가르쳐 보잖아. 내가 대 ranchi düne 냐네 제통에 지거래스. 제가 간데 제거를 마다와체. 맞소에는 데로와 제세 시원하게 타도 유튜브 개찬에 제로와 고아기를 참조 유튜브 말에 저랑랑 한국 요새는 야유를 송에 나기. 랑이 한국 요새는 내가 저 노브세데 괜히 놀라라래라고 그래. 아니 다 전에 랑시지 말로 대통에 지게 강수만 나게 근데 소소게 랑지 된데 냐네 제로나 랑을 거에 데려왔다 뒤손 뒤세대.
So nowadays, the reason what I'm trying to, tell you is, what I'm trying to share here is to now, don't judge others, think about yourself, and try to make whatever the teaching that someone is giving is become a auxiliary for, subduing of one's own mind. So this is what we need to focus, instead of thinking of others, subduing the mind of others. Whatever the teachings, whoever is giving the teachings, unmistaken teachings, in other words, one must practice that, and that benefits one's mind and subdue one's mind. This is what we needed at this time.
그 가르쳐는 뒤에서 제너레다. 근데 단단가서 네 근데 제바 영화를 용근도 천원서 제시소는 다 정문으로 지게 봐. gaddi henda sonde de dananga so ta jamro chi ta getu ro so duada koron to ba nyane chen koron to ba jile chenge chi jongna ya nghe tận chế cái xe đấy lo ngang shu shu chỉ chế rồi chế mình đó rồi ta mình chế cái chỉ là mà chế đại chỉ phải yêu số để chế cái chế 따로 chế cái wa.
So here now, His Holiness always said, this is the practice I have done, and I have little experience about whatever the practice I have done. And if you can do it, and you will also gain this experience and so forth. So this, he often, share his experience with others, the stages of the practices. So one must practice by using one's wisdom. And if one is able to practice by using one's wisdom, then one will be able to subdue one's mind, which is the main focus, which is of our practice of Dharma. So just don't think about, this is how the teachings are mentioned in the Dharma teaching. In the Dharma teaching, this is what is mentioned and that is mentioned, but you are not doing it. So if you keep telling others you are not doing, he is not doing, she's not doing, and so forth, it's not going to help us at all. It is the main thing is that to subdue your own mind by engaging in practice. And to continue the earlier translation that I forgot, Rinpoche has mentioned about the Shantideva has stated that it is not possible for one to find the cover entire earth when the earth is filled with the thorns and needles and so forth. But what is the best is to find a really good shoes with perfect sole where you can wear and step onto it, so you will be protected from this needle being pricked on one's leg and so on. So they either engage in the news and engage in. Do not reject to become okay. So for this, you have to be consistent in your behaviors. The ornament of the Minor Sutra says, know thy ways to gather disciples to be for a method to give benefits and involving others in comprehending the teachings, involving them in engaging, and likewise involving yourself. So this is the answer if someone asks you the answer of why it is necessary to training in the 4 ways of gathering disciples to help others to mature. So this is the answer. Answer is ready in the teachings if you can read the book text carefully. Well, whether you practice or not is up to you, but answer is in there.
nghe Lam Rim Chenmo ge da xian long xiao zhi nga zu gang ge che zong de xuan zhuo de xian long de ma che bi dan da la ci ji me che de ma luo de xie jiao guo liang xi jie le de chi zhuo de yang da de ma shen ge de men du da wo nghe de yang nghe Lam Rim Chenmo zhuo da na ge jie guo de me xian da ka zhe le de nghe xiu niu ge ma de.
So here that somebody said that this is how we should teach the Lam Rim Chenmo to the Westerners. Somebody suggested me by just reading through entire text and so forth. It's not really effective. Somebody suggested me, but I don't listen to that because reason is that because I have received myself an oral transmission of great Lam Rim Chenmo from the great teachers. So my motivation is to teaching Lam Rim Chenmo, explaining Lam Rim Chenmo, at the same time also giving the oral transmissions. It is therefore I'm reading through the text.
Da somba ne du go be jin sen che da du yi xie le ga de sen de le do somba xie le ne le da Dewa ale what is Jaren Sasha. Pansang, Jimbo Pansang Tangi.
Okay, let's take it 10 minutes.
아니 somba deji shele somba dewa jebo de dewa je kaza re dewa jebo de deja la chi shire chi shi ba yin she na dewa jebo de deja la chi shi ba yin she na somdo ni jinbene kare ta jin kwa jinba yi kare she gersana jinbene chönyin nero de shede es chebobola gawa shi be shoro se te gang ro tsai ba ke jima kasa ke ni ma ma le sa
Okay, so here the functions, the third, we're talking about their functions. The question first is this: what do these 4 ways of gathering disciples do for disciples? The answer to the question is saying that generosity makes them 5 vessels to hear the teachings, for it makes them happy with the person who explained it.
te je chen yang da ro je chen yang da se ro ta ne de ro se ne su su pe na nga da wo je la ga bo chen ye le nge ko la la na ku nyo ro
So this is what is meant by the make them a fit vessels, right? Because if someone lacks you, and someone actually values your advice and so forth, then if you tell someone, and that individual will actually listen to you, right?
de che ro ji ta nyen ba ma yi she la ka sa na nyen ba ma wa ne ten bi chue de le me ba she to o so re o de le de che da de she ba she jin ten so je bi she ro
So then here it says, the pleasant speech makes them take interest in teaching that is to be given, because it gives them a detailed understanding of the aims and dispel their doubt.
nga so de nang che yeng de sin na ta nga so jiten bi se de jiten bi se de ko de de xiang de do yin zan ji de nga ge so de de yin de ji xian na ga bu chen yin de ji ma do yang ji nang che yeng de se ga bu che sa de ma re be na de ma yin ba ji xie so na de la ga bu che de li pe bu chen ye kan ze xie so se je ro de yin zan ne dan de de tin ba sing de ge ga re ten so je de ga bu che ge re sa na ni de ma yin ba ji xie ba na 아니 tenso chobada dema yinba chedadi xieso na gawa cheyo yinzadi nyenba chago wari, nyenba ma wasi. Yen nga so pukunda wachila lojo chena katu tali nyenba sikia chago marwa.
So the pleasant speech make them interest in the teachings that is to be given, because it gives them a detailed understanding of aims and dispel their doubts. So now here, ordinary beings, they will more interest in listening to the explanation of 5 desire objects. But for the disciples of the Dharma, followers of the Dharma, they will be more interested in listening to the teachings of the Dharma that actually teaches us unmistaken path and teaches us what is to be abandoned and what is to be adapted. And then also by teachings, it also dispels our doubt. And having dispelled one's doubt, then one will become an interest in the listening to the teachings of Dharma.
This doesn't also be passing over John, but Cordiova. When a Jimby passing Jimbagi, any period on any Senagi, Yimiti, any Jimby and Judo Chela, Gabuchegroa. Internet him but the Chagri, then she has one, any Gabuchesilla, Juyundi, Yambacharo.
So if one understands the meaning and the benefits, then one will take keen interest in engaging in these practices. For instance, practice of generosity. When speaking about practice of generosity, if one understands the faults of stinginess, that's if you know the faults of stinginess and disadvantages of being disadvantage of the stinginess, you will then have interest in engaging in practice of generosity.
Don't show by name, Tembajan to Duba was it or part of the simple to Tembana in Lalentona, and it don't show by the shadow.
So then working at the aims make them practice in accord with what they have been taught.
Don't timber names and Shuba tele Medoba, Yerumbo Juba Shibi, Shede, Sondo.
So then consistency of behavior makes those who have engaged in the teachings not reject them, but practice for a long time.
That the Timo may be Chichi careers and a passion, but so get again, and let the Haran check you about the Gekentel, Dunsu Diana, and so tell Medoba, thank you for what you're doing. And my current gun the so and the start to shoot showing Ma Yungure, and it drew sympathies again, and Medoba temple to Hure so.
So as we have read earlier that if one is actually engages in those practice as you instruct others, then whoever is listening to one's instructions or followers, in other words, one's followers, their practice will become so stable and become very enthusiastic of engaging in the practice as well.
There, Jensen and that Mazo Jetangi Shawat and Logodo. Gone the Dangit, the Tangi, the Yando Lacachang, and the Lacachang and so you may do at your Conando College and Lacachella, 2 PH and Logodo.
So this is how in our mundane, day-to-day life, because for instance, let's talk about if you're working for somebody or any companies or organizations. If the boss comes and work with you, and you will also have you will also grow an enthusiasm in you to work along with your boss. That's the same. Yeah.
That is Shedder. Don't want to move there. Nipa yin and member yin, Somba yin and Druba de Japan number, Jean was yes or sondo.
So then the ornament of the middle Mahayana Sutra says, by the first they become vessel, by the second they take interest, by the third they practice, by the fourth they train.
The court do going at Jena and doing Mobile about the Tangoreas. Then another which you get to Mobo Goyana, and again doing Mobile and get to do Goreas, Chinsacaras and us, such as Batirendo.
So now next it talks about the need for those who gather a following to rely on them. So if one has aspiration to gather disciples, one should engage in why one need to engage in the practice of the 4 ways of gathering disciples, will be explained in this particular chapter, the following chapter.
Jipane déjà kinje ten druba dan to zombo sanje nanje sombe na koduba nanje dela ten gote koduba dan demba na sunde lane yanda ten kinje ten kin dru shi jin ta zan yin ba rao de ma xie so so de xie jie yin long ji ma de de xie ge men de.
So then here again, the ornament of the minor sutta states, those involved in gathering, the need for those who gather a following to rely on them, because the Buddha have declared these 4 ways to gather disciples to be what achieves all aims of all disciples, and to be the superb method. Those gathering a following must rely on them. The ornament of the Mahayana Sutta states, those involved in gathering a following rely on this means. It is praised as a superb method and achieving all aims for all.
안되지. 대야 표선초 나 표선초 양라 센나 말이야. 딱 가지 제 듀얼라 상추 선반나제 샤레도 나우도. 어제 대야 전체 야다 전체 매번 되는 말어. 그게 전주 그게 세가 말이야. 소셜 비즈니스 전체로 나오자 되디 아니 칼라 되네. 아니 냠바 되네. 나오자 되고도.
So
this
is actually true. This is how the bodhisattvas practice, by engaging in practice of the 4 ways of gathering disciples, engaging in practice of generosity, giving material gift to their disciples to gather and give them a teachings and so forth. It is true. We need to have a method, all kinds of methods to really teach others and make others to the vessel, perfect vessel for receiving the teachings of the Dharma. But for even if, let's take example of our kids. When we need to advise kids, we have to award them. We have to give them some kind of gift, and then they will just calm their mind and listen to you. In the same manner, not only that kids, but also even animals. We give them a gift and train them, and they listen to you.
제대로 쓰던 데면 네 촌이 매지 현재 당세원 좀좀범도 당대 컨트롤 소바 제대로 취지 생제 난 가와시바 오 손도 단 지대비 간현범하는 지대비 당 뭐정도 제로 뭐서는 파쇼바도 가보이면 된다 남준다 때로 손도
그렇죠. So then, this is the 5th part, where it says somewhat elaborate explanations. So under this, what it says is there are 2 types of pleasant speech. The first pleasant speech associated with the worldly custom means that you first assume a clear expression free of anger, give a smile, and then please living beings in worldly ways, such as inquiring after their health, etc. The second type, pleasant speech, associated with the presenting the perfect teachings, means that you instruct living beings, or make it matters long.
지tembi 다 랑리치 모세 내가 소에 간노나 되니제 메셔 도도 사탄치도 멜 나지 된도 연치 송샤 단단들 냠바만데 지tem비 취지세고라 당가도 뒤진 전소 놓으라 냠바마의 젠라 네네 가서 냠바마치 된다는 송도.
So this is actually that teaches us how to behave ourselves. In other words, really, including one's facial expressions, your demeanors, and so on and so forth. And when you are in the society, what kind of behavior one should have or one should adopt, and it actually implicitly talks about how one can behave oneself when you're in a society that will not actually offend. Your actions or behavior will not become offensive to others and so forth. And also, advice here in this section.
다 추쇼유 토네 냠바 마치데 양다비 추템바 당 뎀비 냠바 마와 네스 데바다 추춘 당 토바다 동안다 셔럽 제바 소레 장네 펜바데 데이시데 센젠라 추템바 오 송데시.
So then the second type, pleasant speech associated with the presenting the perfect teachings, means that you instruct living beings in the teachings for their benefit and happiness, beginning with the teachings on developing faith, ethical discipline, study, generosity, and wisdom.
데로가 가서 네 추쇼 모셔데 가디나 다 펜바다 데이시데 세디 그런 통만에 균형 그런게 파 샹보도 세워를 지게 생비토네 아니 라마노아지 땡요디 네 파쇼텔라 뭐네게 지 냐네 쟁이 지소나 지 베데 나소지 내가 민반도 쉬고차고 알아.
So here this particular speech, the second type of speech, is really talks about presenting the perfect teachings. Means that you're actually presenting your teachings with the motivation of love, compassion, and sense of caring for others. If one's presentation is based on such motivations, then this will really become effective to the listeners. Effective for the listeners, sorry.
디가이 가서 장가 대다 추춘 토도 동안 와서시다 최여시라시디 아니 판도 된데 장가때 데려도.
So here it says condition berimche.
파빈 노딩 생제로.
대바드 수준 대바드 동안 셔를 라인데.
네, 대다 수준 동안.
This is also known as the five noble characters or seven noble characters, such as developing faith, ethical discipline, study, generosity, and wisdom.
네, 그 장카 산제레마도 소콘도아 지 소소기 때문에 지 바 샹바다 제가 기는 한비도는 지 라마나와를 같이 땡투아이나 그 될라네 니 추쇼 돈에 냠바마도 로도아.
So this will then become a very pleasant speech. It become a pleasant speech because if one is giving with one's presentation of the Dharma teachings is imbued with the perfect motivations of such as love, compassion, and sense of caring for others.
양 단다 이제 가서 시거진 지템비 냠바모 대 경로 도자제 파쇼던 거고도 지기 라터를 지된다라 지 존들에 대해서나 컨트롤 못했어요. 로아 디체시 라치 문제데 가서 제신 범위 영웅 존대는 세대 대 참조에 년가요로와.
So here now, of course, again here just mere maintaining one's proper facial expressions and not actually exposing your negative actions and behaviors to others, but at the core, your motivation is to deceive others, then this is not appropriate at all. It is actually possible, and it happens in our worldly life. There is someone who was trying to actually deceive you with a very humble behavior and smiling and talking very pleasantly. So this is not the pleasant speech or the pleasant speech. So this is what the Kungdang Rinpoche has stated. Those are the one should be considered as an evil person without having any horns and tails and fangs and so forth, but coming approaching you with a very smile face, with very humble attitude and so forth, but they are really an evil person.
Since you Kelo Sola, Lucy, Loju Sheba La, Shadow Meva, Pembi Tsujebi, Yamba Mawan, Chekawa Nala Yang, Hobart Town. The moment Juma Membala, Juma Membala, Jupapa, Dendro Chibi Shadow, Marodo, Shayu Chu, Zimbatan, Sutinja Town Sheba. Jumembala, Jupatan Jason, Saint Yang, Dewatan, Dembala, Yang. Puji Chu Papi Demba Jetambatan. Chimbatan, Rodo Shumana, Bamebana, Bayeba Gobi, Shir, Guatan, Tenzo Joana, Sevi Shetu, Chu Chedin, Betan Shebane, Yamba Mayu, go, son the Yamba Mawad, and did you go though?
So now, the avenues of pleasant speech are as follows. To an enemy who would kill you, you say helpful words without a fault in your heart. With the very dull-witted, you willingly rise to the challenge in a tirelessly giving talks on the teachings and causing them to adhere to virtue. To devious beings who deceive their masters, abbots, etc., and engage in wrongdoings, you speak pleasantly with helpful words and without anger, teaching even the most difficult persons, in order that person whose minds have not matured may eliminate obscurations and reborn in happy realms. You give discourses to them on primary practice, generosity, ethical disciplines, to persons whose minds have matured, who are rid of obscurations and possessed of joyful firm of mind, and you reveal the foremost and perfect teachings of the four noble truths, and you encourage you encourage householders and renunciates who are careless to be conscientious, and to those who have doubts, you speak elaborately and explain the teachings to them to dispel their doubts. So this is always it is completely related to the teachings of the mind training, right? Because even when someone is planning to kill you, and someone is planning to take your life, and for them, without having anger and hatred, one should try to, speak to this person pleasantly, with pleasant, speak to the person, peacefully and pleasantly, with the good motivations.
Kendrick never saying a Sanjay Marum Batasala, Colonel Cutting the Jimacha, Colonel Danta Shamba that say Jondona, the Col Jalon over Sage and Doa. The Satea, Paroporana Jachet Sharamado, Rani, you call a Katijan, Ranila Devada, Rani, you call a Nursiana, Ranila, Jacheteva Yensona, Jachet Tombetone, Kesson Rani Lechoa, Paro de Germany, Ketchamasia.
So now here, sometimes that someone may say that if you let that, people who take advantage of you, and if you keep letting them take advantage of you and letting them do whatever they do, and without confronting, and such person will become habituated with such negative conduct, and such individual will continue to engage in this conduct that is harming others and so forth. But here now, when we are speaking in this way, it is we are just talking about the other person. Just try to think about ourselves. What is benefit that we may have by confronting that individual? What kind of benefit that we may gain by controlling yourself and talking to the individual pleasantly and peacefully? So this is what we need to to measure these two. Which one is more beneficial to oneself? So here, the teachings we find here is something that is opposite to what we do normally, right? When someone is trying to harm you and someone is talking unpleasant about you, one should talk to that person pleasantly and peacefully. However, this is not the so. We, as ordinary beings, we are other way around, right? So here then also said that sometimes we will have disciples or the followers who is very dull in their intelligence, with not being able to understand, regardless of how many times you may give them instructions or the teachings. It happens even in the monastery as well. Sometimes some younger monks, regardless of how much you teach them, that is just like you're actually you're teaching to the stone, and it just doesn't understand at all. It happens, but this is not how we should just, this person will not understand it. We should not abandon that individual, but try your best to really to give them teachings and time and again, and making this person understand even a little bit of the teachings of the Dharma. So this is, it says now, although it is very difficult, but this is how we practice and how we train our mind. So it says, like previously we read that to devious beings who actually deceive their masters, abbot, etc., and engaging in the wrongdoings. But you speak pleasantly with helpful words, without anger, teaching them the most difficult persons as well. So here now, we're talking about someone whose mind stream is not matured. So when speaking about the mind stream is not matured, so even though that the vast number of people may consider themselves as a practitioner of Dharma, but so far as the maturation of their mind is concerned, I think 99% of the disciples' mind stream is not matured. It is, to speak honest, many of the practitioners who actually consider themselves as a practitioner, but the mind stream is not mature at all. So for those whose mind stream is not mature, to them, we should make an effort to teach them the practice of generosity, ethical discipline, patience, and so forth. And when we go through such teachings, we'll then the teachings of rebirths, afterlife, and beginningless of human the life of sentient beings will be then also taught at the same time.
다 주민버스는 다 관계 대파다 추진의 영역이 다 관계 빠지네 선바 대파다 상배다 랑신 소의 인비 인해도서라 랑도게 내려 제바지는 제 만용에 도서라 네 denjal도 된 걸 son도
룸체 안게 순나게
주민버스에 들어가서 간지질에 세우잖아 대파당 다지 수준의 소바 대다게 봐 이시드 잠아요 가시질라 아니 따와기 손을 제바 랑도게 내라 아니 신주 제만 통해 제 마행에서로 된저달라 denjal도 있네 된 걸 son도.
So then those who have not really know how to engage in the practice of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, to them, then one should teach the Four Noble Truths and what is abandonment and what is to be abandoned and what is to be adopted, and the path and the fruitions must be taught to those individuals.
주만에 주바 빠는다. 주민버 주바다 태와선도 된다 간다는 것이 다 간제 때로 양 답이 피치 nembashi son도 안돼. nembashi 때문에
so then what it says is working at the aims is twofold: bringing them to maturity and liberating the liberated. So it is also presented in three parts as follows.
nembashi 추기 때문에 고아질 행위에서나 최대염이 계속 있는 말에 세리에나 집밖에 가서 따지자서나 이제 되는 예 제투야지.
So this practice or teachings on Four Noble Truths is not something that is only for the it is not only a spiritual teaching, it's not a spiritual practice. This actually talks about the fact. Such teachings of the Four Noble Truths can also be explained even to non-believers, such as scientists and so forth.
아니 다 침바도 로도 슝한데서 아니 다가로와 로도 슝한생다 바던데 맞지 거래 바 덴바메나 수준 손도 말해 아니 수준 나이 원도서나 수준 손도 명인자네 아니 바에 비추된 거 손도.
So then you encourage the householder and the renouncers, referring to the bhikshus and and bhikshunis and so forth. For them who are careless, to be conscientious. So, and to those who have doubts, you speak elaborately and explain the teachings to them to dispel their doubts.
당간 저기 봐 자찬도 지제나 근데 냠바마 거사기 가사도 수술에서는 랑이지나 다 가사 때때 되기 시작하래서는 뭔지요 봐.
So if you were to ask the questions to whom you should speak pleasantly, those are the individual now. Those are the individual you must identify to whom you should speak pleasantly and soothingly.
지단에 냠바마서데 소소게 메신데 노라 야라상셔다 메신데 지체와라 냠바마오데 냠바도 거로.
So pleasant speech is something that is needed for all of us to be a real a moral person. One should have the quality of speech, which is the pleasant speech. The quality of pleasant speech must be the part of one's life as someone who is following the teachings of Buddha.
랑가는도나 가면 전소 간대 진도서는 매기 추 겸쇼도 돼 구만도 소소hin이 바 겸쇼서는 되게 가는 뭔가 송해. 아니 라바데 메소게 자문인도 노로 뭐보지게 정으로 같은 제나 겸쇼는 게 진제도 되게 기본도 송에 다가서 추쇼 개념이 시어지는 통용의 기본도 송 되는 랑연도 송다. 되게 거 치치지에서로.
So that's the reason, it's always he always often advises the Tibetans by saying that, when you are on the street and when you come across with someone, and don't wait that person to smile at you. Just smile at them in the beginning with pleasantly. Just waiting for them to smile and then I'm going to smile. That is not the way you should do. You should always smile at them, genuinely. That's why His Holiness said there are even many people around the world that they comment on how, the facial expressions His Holiness actually wear. When you look at him, as he's always smiling, and then people say that his smile face will really ease their mind or please their mind. So this is something that we really needed, but a genuine smile, not just changing the shape of your mouth, just but give them a real smile.
다 상주 대외 뭐버지 냥선님비 상주 선문 지대비 추던 댐비 yenhba ma wasingde chonyimi ba shen yin zongdang de dembi do ne counter ba so gogo do 상 benanga chu chu ke cha ma shi je 대외 뭐버지 라네 동에 게 상주 선바시 yen나양 지대비 추던 댐비 do so yen나 아니 yin 좀 chonyimi ba yin 좀비 도네 아니 counter ba so ba yin 아니 샹바다 제이 노죠 de dengo do.
So even the bodhisattvas, if you look at this practice sort of getting, the four ways of getting the disciples, it is really something that is accord with the mundane activities, right? How to behave ourselves, how to speak pleasantly to others, how to engage in conduct when you are in the society, something that will not become offensive to others and so forth.
다 된셔바네 손도 된셔바네 마멤바 셰바당 멤버 넘버 2와 셰바 니소 손도 니소 대손라 첸디위 된 진든 주바네 첸데당 저와셔마당 첸데시 인가세네 장가 손로지 괜히 사치 소소는 레면도.
So working at the aims is twofold, bringing them immature to maturity and liberating the matures. It is also presented in three parts as follows.
단 지tembe terwa 단 jitembe ge ni densheba ji 간데 제국을 살아이나 첸델라 세고라 다 첸델라 densheba ji 가르쳐는 첸데이 된 진된 조바네 롱슈 난 주바당 송아당 베이 타 최단 팀바 시든 주바오 송의 최쇼네 계제시나 아니 첸데이 도고 당송 주타 간데 제국을 송아이나 데리.
So then the first it says involving person in taking up the aims of this life is causing them to employ means consistent with the teachings to acquire, to protect, and to increase their resources.
다 최단 팀바 생인데 고아치는 거로 마도 마소게 젠데게 총바이나 가리에나지 다간지 최단 팀바서 시작하고로 소소 계속하는 바로 부들로 당고로.
So it's this should be, all this practice should be done in accordance with the teachings of the Dharma.
되지. 다 최심이 되는 젠데 주바네서 다 된셔지들 안에 두지에 들어와. 최심이 되는 젠데 주바네서 롱셔 빠네 로모 소이 저종랑 거 봐대. 데레 심말라 대장 말에 심말라 대와 대장 대망에서 소도.
So the second is this involving person in taking up the purpose of the future lives, meant to establish person in the life of renunciate who lives as mendicant after they have freed themselves of positions. although this is certain to bring happiness in future lives, it is not certain to do so in this life. Sorry, that's all.
당가서 지와시마 펜출레 대포 용고이 된다라 레카 카르체 고르세소나 아니 세데겐 다 노셰데 빵 아니 소이 가사 러중기 초하는 거였는도 러중은 거고레스 다간제 대녀와 샤와뉴의 지도는 네 지와시마 야보용에 된다마도 다 차단 조적이 정원된 로아이나 지와시마 거치로.
So now, in order to have a happy life in one's future lives, what we need to do is one should not have attachment towards the resources of this life or the wealth and so forth. So therefore it says, involving person in taking up the purpose of future life means to establish person in the life of renounced. That means you actually renounce and you should give up the attachment towards worldly affairs. So who lives in mendicant after they have rid themselves of positions and so forth.
nangama sanje shi jubi kola ro de shwa de dosroa da lonshe pangne lombo jonjo jone ne chola ne ne derwa.
So during the Buddha's time, all those bhikshus or the followers of the Buddha are completely renounced. They are renounced all those worldly affairs because even their day-to-day food depends on the other's kindness, because by going for alms and feed themselves, and that is the only thing that they're without having any other worldly positions.
단달라 de 테메세고라 단달라 de lumban는 카히카시 여세고다 야나야 딱 겐디 자타 몸보기 더하나게 초아 nombol을 때는 데 lum바데야 아땡고 말와 데레손이 되는 새로운 데론도 대신 같은 데만도 베티코노 다가란 때는데 아예메 미시 또 자신보에서로 와서 데레손 처벌을 지잖아.
So there are a few bhikshus who might be the Theravadan traditions, might be still adopting this life of renunciates. In other words, renounce everything, and they are very depending on their day-to-day life is depending on others by going for alms and so forth. But then here again, the one thing is that, and then if there were like hundreds and thousands of monks, then if you keep going for alms, then it is not really appropriate, because you may not find an individual who actually give all this, feed all the thousands of monks. So it is not one day, but it's a day to day. I mean, every day. So it is not. This has not happened. But now, some occasions, some special occasions, those bhikshus are engaging in such practice of begging and going through the village and begging their foods, but occasionally, not all the time.
shimala dewa dejang demangye society tindrige kangye jothongye geno de en shima penchela jibo da sendel da tindi jibo ye marwa demangye so.
So therefore it says, although this is sudden to bring happiness in future lives, right? Where it says it is not certain to do so in this life. That is true, right?
shimala dewa nge jang demangye so dich 다 세대시 년가기 되는 전에 조바네 손도 친바원 로드 shumalan jiten tang jiten 대비 차전전의 조바 때 세대라 리선신 더 정와 제라 심만어서 답이 하당 양일랜데 바 더비 쇼로 손도 돼 대신 년가라 편바지 제어이나 아니 다 시라게 나라데 신내 주지고 소야 되야.
So then here now it says, involving person in taking up the aims for both this and future lives means to cause householders and renouncers to take up freedom from mundane and supermundane attachment. For this generates mental and physical pliancy in the present life, and the attainment of the purified deity and nirvana is nirvana in the future. So by relying upon the mundane path, the practice of mundane path, by renunciating mere, the worldly, affairs, and then adopting the complete meditative absorptions, one may gain some level of freedom, such as, taking rebirth in a heightened state of divinity or the divine state. However, if one really wants to renounce oneself and to free from samsara, then it is necessarily engaged in the practice of meditating on selflessness. And realization of selfness is the main factor for liberating oneself from samsaric existence. So therefore it says, for this generate the mental and physical pliancy in this present life and the attainment of the pure field, purified deity and nirvana in the future.
Mitije tawala kung kumba nane temba dela nanshin limbe ripa mogoye teta tensho pa kawo tensho bi rimba yang shipi shirab jena thoma lobi danga lanju tene lo drinto sunga na drinke danga ene shirab jachimba sunga na chuyo samo danga chamo na juba she to sondo on teba lora chene ngen reshi sanjaba.
So at the aim, even when it is very difficult, it is difficult to induce those who have not previously accumulated roots of virtue to take up virtue. It is difficult to work at the aim with respect to those who have magnificent resources, because they they live in a situation where there are so many grounds for their unconscientious, and it is difficult to work at the aim with respect to those who are indoctrinated with the views of non-Buddhist philosophers, because they are hostile to the teachings, and because of their foolishness, do not understand reasonings. With respect to the stages of working at the aim, you first cause them with the childlike intelligence to follow easy personal instructions. Then, when their understanding has reached a middle level, you have them follow intermediate personal instructions, and finally, when their wisdom has greatly expanded, you have them follow the profound teachings and subtle personal instructions.
다 되는 제다 상주 선배 담바선에 네 진주 되와시비 네 비유 공부지 네 냥선에네 네 조비 상제지 보고 네 준보마도 많이와요 더버 지잖아 샤웨 네 시에는 봐야 되는 쇼비 네 담바 투비 한번에 랑게 주잖아 자이나면 거지 신조라도 소네 뭐하다 뭐나 제로지다.
So by receiving the instructions on the Bodhisattva's practice and observing the Bodhisattva's vows, and following the practice of the 4 ways of gathering disciples, by means of this, may I, in all sentient beings, gain the state of complete enlightenment. So may I and all other sentient beings gain the complete state of enlightenment. Please bless all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the lineage gurus to be able to do this.
Ah ja, 对，切，感觉。